Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. There are some books that just get under your skin, that stay with you long after you've turned the last page. For me, one of those books is Daphne du Maurier's Rebecca. I picked it for us today because it's more than just a story, it's a deep dive into memory, identity, and the shadows of the past, and it's presented in such an utterly captivating way. So imagine this: we start our journey not at the beginning of the story, but long after the main events have unfolded. The narrator, our unnamed protagonist, is living a quiet, almost deliberately mundane life abroad with her husband, Maxim de Winter. It's a life ruled by routine, a pleasing antidote to fear, as she puts it. They find joy in simple things, like reading about cricket matches and dog races in old English papers. But even in this seemingly peaceful existence, the past, specifically a place called Manderley, still looms large. She describes Manderley in her mind as a jewel in the hollow of a hand, a place of perfect symmetry. Yet later she sees it as a desolate shell, soulless at last, unhaunted after everything that happened. It's a place that was so vibrant, even with rooks circling above the woods as they used to do at Manderley. But how did she get here, living this life of exile? Well, let me take you back to Monte Carlo, where our young, incredibly naive narrator was working as a companion to an obnoxious American socialite named Mrs. Van Hopper. Now, Mrs. Van Hopper is quite a character. She's described with small pig's eyes and an inevitable lorgnette, the enemy to other people's privacy. She's a snob, always on the hunt for well-known personalities, and it's this snobbery that indirectly sets the whole story in motion. One day, Mrs. Van Hopper spots him Maxim de Winter, the owner of Manderley. He's a man burdened by a recent tragedy. His wife, Rebecca, had died, and they say he can't get over his wife's death. Our narrator, a raw ex-schoolgirl, red-elbowed and lanky-haired, quickly finds herself drawn into Maxim's world. There's a particular scene where she clumsily knocks over a vase at lunch, and instead of being annoyed, he invites her to join him. He sees something in her that others, including Mrs. Van Hopper, don't. He tells her, "Even if you had not knocked over that vase so clumsily, I should have asked you." It's a whirlwind romance, almost too fast to believe. He proposes marriage in a very unconventional way, over breakfast, asking, "You don't want it truthful, do you, or any of that nonsense?" Because the whole thing can be so easily arranged in a few days. It's a proposal devoid of moonlight and kneeling, unlike what she'd read in books. He even acknowledges his proposal isn't her idea of a proposal, suggesting they ought to be in a conservatory. You in a white frock with a rose in your hand and a violin playing a waltz in the distance. This fast pace is crucial because it keeps them and us from dwelling on the past. So, they get married and arrive at Manderley in early May, and this is where the real psychological drama begins. Manderley is not just a house, it's a living, breathing entity, completely dominated by the memory of Rebecca. From the moment they arrive, it's clear Rebecca's presence is everywhere. The staff, gathered by the formidable housekeeper, Mrs. Danvers, gives the narrator a chilling welcome. Mrs. Danvers herself is a skeletal figure dressed in black, whose prominent cheekbones and great hollow eyes gave her a skull's face. She takes the narrator's hand, and it's limp and heavy, deathly cold. Now you might be wondering, what was Rebecca like, and why is her presence so strong? Well, Rebecca, as we later learn, was incredibly beautiful, charming, and accomplished. She was the sort of woman who ran the house herself and was tremendously popular. Everyone adored her, even Maxim's difficult grandmother. But here's the thing, our narrator is none of these things. She's young, shy, and clumsy. She feels like a schoolgirl, gauche and awkward. She's constantly compared to Rebecca, whether explicitly or implicitly. She finds herself sitting in Rebecca's chair in the library, and even Jasper, Maxim's spaniel, is accustomed to her because Rebecca used to feed him sugar there. Mrs. Danvers, Rebecca's former personal maid, is the ultimate guardian of Rebecca's memory. She simply adored Rebecca and resents the new Mrs. De Winter's presence. She tells the narrator, "Nobody wanted you at Manderley. We were all right until you came." She meticulously maintains Rebecca's rooms in the West Wing, untouched and furnished, filling them with Rebecca's clothes and personal items. effectively turning them into a shrine. This is why the new Mrs. De Winter is given a less desirable suite in the East Wing. Mrs. Danvers even chillingly asks, "Do you think the dead come back and watch the living?" The narrator feels like an uninvited guest in her own home. She wants to manage the household, but feels inadequate, thinking, "I was not even capable of licking stamps compared to Rebecca who handled everything." The climax of the psychological torment comes with the annual Manderley fancy dress ball. The narrator, in an attempt to please Maxim and assert herself, decides to surprise him with her costume. Mrs. Danvers surprisingly seems to help, suggesting she copy a portrait of Caroline de Winter, a relative of Maxim's, in a white dress. The narrator is ecstatic. Feeling excited, so happy and so proud, she descends the grand staircase, expecting Maxim's delight, but instead, his face turns ashen white. He tells her, in an icy cold voice, to go and change, find an ordinary evening frock. Anything will do, go now, before anybody comes. Why such a strong reaction to a costume? Well, Beatrice, Maxim's sister, later explains the horrible truth. The costume was Rebecca's. The portrait was of Caroline de Winter, yes, but Rebecca had worn that exact dress to the last ball. The narrator, unaware of this, had unwittingly dressed as Rebecca's ghost. It was such a frightful shock for him, Beatrice says, believing it was deliberate on your part. It's a devastating moment for our narrator, who feels like she's burnt her boats for all time, but the true turning point comes shortly after the ball. A ship, the Sanity, runs aground in a bay near Manderley, and to salvage it, a diver goes down. What he finds shocks everyone. Rebecca's boat, the Geo reveals, at the bottom of the bay, with the body in the cabin. This contradicts the accepted story that Rebecca had drowned in an accident and her body had been found miles away. Months later, this discovery leads to a harrowing confession. Maxim, burdened by the secret for a year, finally breaks down and tells the narrator the shocking truth: he killed Rebecca. Rebecca was not drowned at all. I killed her. I shot Rebecca in the cottage in the cove. I carried her body to the cabin and took the boat out that night and sunk it there, where they found it today. This is a pivotal moment. The narrator, who has been struggling with Rebecca's overshadowing memory, now learns that the ideal woman everyone adored was actually a monster. So, what really happened between Maxim and Rebecca? Why did he kill her? Maxim reveals their marriage was a sham, a degradation. Rebecca was cruel, manipulative, and promiscuous. She despised men. She had affairs with other men, including her cousin, Jack Favell. Maxim describes her as cold and indifferent, and splendid in her wickedness. She even taunted him with the idea of having a child by another man, knowing he could never prove it wasn't his, and that the child would inherit Manderley in his name. This was Rebecca's last supreme bluff, her way of ensuring her victory even in death. By pushing Maxim to kill her, he reveals he couldn't stand it anymore. He describes her laughter, how she went on laughing even as he shot her. This act was not out of anger but a desperate escape from a life of degradation. The investigation proceeds, with Maxim initially suspected of murder, especially after Rebecca's cousin, Jack Favell, tries to blackmail him with the "No Rebecca" role before she died. Favell even tries to use Ben, a local half-wit who might have seen something near the cottage, as a witness, but Ben, either out of loyalty or simple-mindedness, denies seeing anything. The tide turns with the introduction of Dr. Baker. Rebecca's old engagement diary reveals she had an appointment with a Dr. Baker on the day she died. When they track him down, Dr. Baker reveals the truth: Rebecca had visited him not for a diet cheat, as Favell foolishly suggested, but because she was terminally ill with cancer. She could never have had a child. This revelation changes everything. The motive for Maxim to kill her, as presented by Favell, jealousy over an affair and a child, disappears. The jury concludes Rebecca died by suicide, likely due to her illness, and this, my friends, is where the narrator's transformation truly shines. When Maxim first confessed, she was momentarily numb, a wooden thing, but as the gravity of his situation sinks in, she realizes something profound. She's no longer afraid of Rebecca. She doesn't hate her anymore because Rebecca never loved Maxim. Her focus shifts from her own insecurities to protecting Maxim. She tells him, I would fight for Maxim, I would lie and perjure and swear, I would blaspheme and pray. Rebecca had not won, Rebecca had lost. She becomes his steadfast protector, thinking it was I now who was taking care of him. She even stands up to Mrs. Danvers, telling her, I'm afraid it does not concern me very much what Mrs. De Winter used to do. I am Mrs. De Winter now, you know, and if I choose to send a message by Robert, I shall do so. This is a massive leap from the shy girl who hid Rebecca's torn-out page. In the end, while Maxim is cleared, Manderley is lost. It mysteriously burns down, possibly at Mrs. Danvers' hand, who disappears after the inquest. The book doesn't explicitly state the cause of the fire in these excerpts, but the narrator mentions Maxim saying Mrs. Danvers cleared out, she's gone, disappeared. She said nothing to anyone, but apparently she'd been packing up all day, and the very last moment in the excerpts is the sky lighting up from a distance, and Maxim realizing, that's Manderley. It's a bittersweet ending. They escape the haunting memory of Rebecca and the physical house that contained it. But they lose their home. So what's the lasting impact of Rebecca today? This novel is a timeless exploration of identity, particularly for women. Our narrator, despite being the second Mrs. De Winter, is never given a first name, highlighting her struggle to define herself outside of Rebecca's shadow. It's a powerful reminder that we often carry the burdens of the past, whether our own or those inherited from others. The book delves into how unspoken truths can corrode relationships and how confronting them, no matter how painful, can lead to liberation. It teaches us about the deceptive nature of appearances and how perfection can hide deep flaws. It's also a masterclass in atmosphere and suspense, a true gothic tale that makes you question who the real villain is. Is it Rebecca, even in death? Is it Maxim? Or is it the pervasive nature of memory itself? I highly recommend you pick up Rebecca if you haven't already. It's a beautifully written, psychologically rich story that will stay with you, prompting you to think about your own identity, the stories we tell ourselves, and the ghosts we carry. It might even make you ask yourself, how much of my present is defined by my past, and what am I willing to do to break free? Thanks for listening, and I hope this peek into Rebecca has sparked your curiosity.